Did you know that parents rank financial literacy as the #1 most difficult life skill to teach? Meet Greenlight, the debit card and money app for families. With Greenlight, you can send money to kids quickly, set up chores, automate allowance, and keep an eye on your kids' spending with real-time notifications. Kids learn to earn, save, and spend wisely, and parents can rest easy knowing their kids are learning about money with guardrails in place. Try Greenlight risk-free today at greenlight.com/Spotify.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
Some things you wouldn't mind being stuck with, like a huge inheritance. But a phone that has to be plugged in just right so it charges is not one of those things. Switch to Verizon and we'll pay off your old phone up to $800 via prepaid MasterCard for a new one on us. Just trade in any phone from our top brands with select unlimited plans. $829.99 purchase with new smartphone line on select unlimited plans. Minimum $90 per month with autopay plus taxes and fees for 36 months required. Place $830 trade-in/promo credit applied over 36 months. Trade-in terms apply. Payoff phone requires smartphone purchase and port-in with new smartphone line on select plan. Must provide most recent bill showing payoff amount of eligible phone. Additional terms apply.
Welcome back to Mama Mystery. I'm your host, Kelly.
And we are back.
Welcome back to Mama Mystery. I am your host, Kelly.
And I am your co-host, Austin.
And it's about freaking time you made time for this podcast because people miss you.
And I'm excited to be here.
Not me. I'm just kidding. I actually did miss you very much.
And I'm excited to be
here. Yeah, good. I'm glad.
Cool.
Okay. So where have you been? You've just been too busy. Just
been busy, but here we are. And it's the new year. It's 2025, baby.
We got big plans.
Oh, big plans coming at you.
Yeah, we're going to make episodes and go to Crime Con, which is basically what we've done the past 3 years.
And we're looking forward to it.
And we're going to keep doing it.
And we're grateful for you listening.
Yes, so grateful. TikTok got banned. If you don't want to hear about this, you can just fast forward, and I don't blame you. But TikTok got banned, and I am kind of bummed about it. I don't know how many of our listeners are on TikTok, but I know that I've gotten some from TikTok because I had a pretty good following on there. I had about 175,000.
Yeah.
Which was the most followers I've ever gotten on any app. But the special thing about TikTok is that the algorithm allows you to find your community of people, and your stuff gets shown to people who are interested in seeing it. It's so weird that it can't be replicated.
And as a result, it's a way that creators can monetize. And so this app going away, a lot of people feel different ways about it. Some people think it's stupid and, get rid of it. It's Chinese, whatever. Okay. But the reality, in our opinion, is that banning the app, it feels unconstitutional in a lot of ways. And even if they're going to go about it, the way they're going about it with just ripping the Band-Aid off and taking it from everybody, you have creators that make money and they rely on this for a living. It's literally no different than if you lost your job or if your business went bankrupt. And so it's pretty serious to think that, hey, this thing's just going to go away kind of overnight. Imagine if you lost your job. That's literally what it's like.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because a lot of people will say it wasn't a Band-Aid. It wasn't overnight. We kind of knew this was coming, but we actually didn't because we knew there was a possibility of it. We knew that the Supreme Court was going to rule on whether or not the TikTok ban or the bill that it basically is housed in was up for debate with the Supreme Court, but we knew that they could make a decision to say it's unconstitutional and that the app would stay and then everything would go on as normal. And we all kind of assumed that it was probably going to be unconstitutional and get banned just because that's what we can expect from our government. But I think people still held out hope that it would stick around.
And even if it was going to get banned, the whole thing of, you got 270 days until it's going to really go dark so that people can adjust and people can, I respected that at least. If you're going to ban it, give 270 days like you talked about.
Yeah.
Because that's 9 months for people to figure out what the hell they're going to do with their life for an income. So wild deal.
Yeah, because there are a lot of people, that's what the people don't understand. I've seen a lot of insensitive comments about, time to go get a real job. I wonder what these TikTok influencers are going to do now. What are they going to put on their resumes? Don't be an asshole, because a lot of families on here depended on this app for the monetization and the ability to help their families. I know personally some big creators who depended on this this app for their income. And in a climate where it is really hard to go find a job, let alone go buy groceries because everything is so expensive, it's really just an insensitive take to shit on people who are upset about losing this app for their job.
Well, and whether it's their main income and they're supplying for their whole family, or whether it's a secondary income to the jobs that already exist inside the household and they're using it to pay for college debt, to pay for, to save and get ahead in life. Like, if you don't like it that other people are making money, the reality is this: it's like, you can shit on it all you want, but it's like,
it's because you couldn't do it.
Yeah, it's because you couldn't do it. So acting, people want to go be actors, and people move to Hollywood to become actors, and very few make it. Well, TikTok, no matter how stupid you think it is, it's entertainment to people. And if you entertain enough people, you make an income based on that. So I don't know. We don't need to talk about it for 20 minutes, but I do think it's interesting. And hopefully, if you're somebody who wants TikTok to be banned, at least you can have that perspective of like, okay, you know what? I get it. Let's make it go away still if that's what you believe. But let's give people time to adjust, because I don't know the number, but I'm sure it's millions of people that rely on this for some sort of income.
It is. Millions of creators relied on it for income. Millions of businesses promoted their business on here, and that's primarily their main source of revenue.
Marketing.
And customers came from TikTok. Not only that, but the TikTok headquarters in Santa Monica housed like 224,000 jobs.
That's crazy.
It's not just creators. It's also a lot of people behind the scenes. It goes deep. If you want me to do a deep dive, go to momandmystery.com and write me a note on there, and I will do a deep dive, because I'm actually pretty well versed on this and I could have a conversation about it, but I know not everybody's into it because not everyone was on there. So anyway, let's go ahead and move on to the story that we're going to talk about today.
Let's hear it.
This is one of those stories that really does shake you to your core, because it's the kind of story that makes you question how well we ever truly know somebody. So Joseph Ferlazzo and Emily Schwarz seemed like your average young couple. They had this whirlwind romance, got married, and they were celebrating their 1-year anniversary with a trip to the scenic woods of Vermont. And on the surface, it all sounded perfect, as it always does. But in October of 2021, what should have been a romantic getaway ended in horror. Emily Schwarz, just 22 years old, was shot and killed inside the couple's camper. But the nightmare did not end there. Her husband, Joseph Ferlazzo, didn't call for help. Instead, he stayed living with Emily's body for days before ultimately dismembering her remains. And when he finally found himself on trial, Joseph took the stand, calmly describing every detail of what happened, and still asked the jury to find him not guilty. So today we are unpacking every aspect of this haunting case, from Joseph and Emily's relationship to the night of her death and the chilling aftermath that follow. It's a story of love, betrayal, and unspeakable violence. Let's dive in. Emily Jean Schwartz was a 22-year-old with her whole life ahead of her. She was born on July 25th, 1999, in Plymouth, New Hampshire. She was a beautiful, aspiring singer with an infectious personality. She loved anything that was bright and sparkly. She loved shopping at the mall, turtles, her cat Oreo, and her dog Remy, which we have a dog named
We have a dog, Remy, yeah.
She always made time for shenanigans with her best friend Lauren, which typically involved bikinis in the summer at Hampton Beach. She loved camping with her family, trips to Acadia, hiking, and rock climbing. Emily graduated from Concord High, and during her school years, she participated in and was passionate about cross country and track and field. Emily went on to earn her license as a nursing assistant, and she found so much joy in her work for caring for others. In her spare time, she also loved to dress up and volunteer at the Renaissance Fair in New Hampshire. I've actually never been to the Renaissance Fair, and I don't know if I completely understand it, but is it like a traveling thing, or does every state have their own Renaissance Fair?
We used to have a Renaissance festival years ago, so I'm not sure.
We do, though, in Kansas City.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, I don't think there's one here, but I don't know. If you know, let me know, because I actually am kind of curious. I think it's fascinating how people get really into character, and they eat the turkey legs, and they do the log running thing where they run on a log, on the water.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway,
I forget that Vermont exists.
Some things we should keep to ourselves.
I do. I wonder how many people are listening from Vermont. Shout out Vermont.
Okay. Anyway, according to her family, Emily's dream was to become a cosmetologist and to help people feel good about themselves, something that she herself struggled with from time to time. She always persevered and fought for what was right. Emily loved going on adventures, knowing that she could always come back to her mom, Adrienne. By all accounts, she was lively, fun-loving, and had a knack for making people laugh. She met Joseph Ferlazzo, who was 11 years her senior, and their connection was immediate. Joseph later described their relationship as magnetic and euphoric, claiming that they just clicked. The age difference, he admitted, raised eyebrows among some of their friends, but it didn't seem to bother either of them. And in fact, they quickly moved in together, sharing an apartment in Essex, Vermont, after just a few months of dating. So that kind of makes me wonder if there was like some love bombing going on, because I just feel like when there's that big of a spark and it's that kind of intense, chaotic energy, and it's that intense, it's like there should be some red flags to maybe pump the brakes a little bit. But obviously in hindsight, we kind of know better when it comes to these things. So then it was Emily actually who made the bold first move when it came to marriage. In what Joseph described as a playful and heartfelt gesture, she proposed to him with a card that read, "Will you marry me? Check yes or no." And Joseph said he immediately checked yes, and the two were married by the end of the summer of 2020. But not everything in their relationship was as picture perfect as Joseph made it seem. He later testified that their relationship was marked by frequent arguments. He claimed that Emily became increasingly insecure and controlling, often checking his phone and questioning him about interactions with others. And these disagreements, according to Joseph, sometimes turned physical. He described instances where Emily would slap, punch, or even throw objects at him in fits of anger.
Yikes.
Joseph told the court that he tolerated the physical abuse because he didn't want to escalate the situation, and he even claimed that Emily's behavior mirrored other relationships he'd been in, saying, quote, "Most of the women in my life have been aggressive," end quote. Whether these statements were true or an attempt to paint himself as a victim would later become a very central issue during this story. October 15th, 2021 would mark their one-year wedding anniversary. To celebrate, the couple planned a road trip to Vermont. Their destination was a remote area of Bolton, not far from the Canadian border. The plan was simple: meet up with Joseph's sister, enjoy the crisp autumn air, and spend some time relaxing in their camper. Emily was reportedly excited about the trip, especially the chance to finally meet Joseph's sister. The couple packed up their camper van, they brought along their dog Remy, and they made the trip to Vermont. They arrived at the Bear Run condos late that evening, and Joseph's sister had rented an Airbnb at the complex, so they briefly met in the parking lot just to say hello. Emily seemed happy and excited, according to witnesses. She even sent her family a quick message on Facebook letting them know that she'd arrived safely. But that message that was sent at 8:13 p.m. would be the last time Emily's father ever heard from her. Meanwhile, Joseph sent his sister a text around 9:39 p.m. saying, "Hey, we're going to take the night to rest," with a happy face. "You still drink coffee? We'll see you in the morning." That text marked a subtle but important shift in the evening's plans. Instead of joining his sister inside the Airbnb to relax and catch up, Joseph decided to stay in the camper with Emily. According to Joseph's testimony, tensions began brewing not long after they settled into the camper. He claimed that Emily was drinking vodka and Red Bull, a drink that he was also enjoying. But Joseph described her as becoming hostile out of nowhere, that she was laying on the couch in the camper and started complaining that the lights of the candles in the camper were too bright. He testified that she started saying hurtful things and then brought up what she described as a dilemma. And this is like super ambiguous and vague, but without knowing what the dilemma was about, Joseph claimed that Emily showed him this lengthy note that she'd typed out in the Notes app on her phone. And the note was apparently super long, but before Joseph could actually read it, Emily deleted it, saying that she just didn't want to talk about it. She wasn't going to talk about it. So Joseph said this left him feeling confused and uneasy, and he later testified that he told Emily, "If you don't want to be here, then don't be here," offering to let her leave if she was unhappy. At that point, according to him, Emily began having a fit, cursing and yelling. Joseph claimed that he tried to de-escalate by turning on some music and dancing with their dog and pouring himself another drink, but the mood didn't improve. I have a lot of problems with this whole story so far, because to say that she just became hostile out of nowhere with no detail and no recollection of why she was getting irritated.
And then he played Mr. Cool the whole time and was like, I poured drinks and turned on music and I tried to make it a good time.
The dog, trying to improve the mood. Like,
yeah, so like your wife's pissed and you're just like
dancing
100% opposite, dancing around. It kind of sounds like,
and we're in
off.
A camper. We're in a room like this
That's
size.
right too. Yeah, it's not like you're in the other room of the house.
Right. So I already red flags are flying, but Joseph alleged that then things turned physical. He described Emily grabbing one of the large candles that they had in the camper and swinging it at him, hitting him in the neck, arms, and possibly his chest. Okay, but how do you not know where she hit you? And she's just like beating you with a candle. That's such an odd weapon of choice. Again,
it's like
something
filling a
that
pillowcase full of soap bars and beating the shit out of somebody.
Yes, it's
like on Step
that
Brothers.
random.
Yeah.
Yes. But he claimed that in response, he wrestled the candle away from her and placed it back on the counter. But according to him, the violence did not stop there. He said that Emily began punching and kicking him, even kicking their dog Remy in the process. And Joseph testified that he eventually restrained Emily by grabbing her arms, holding her down, and telling her, "We're not your punching bags." After things seemed to calm down, Joseph said he then took Remy outside for a walk to cool off.
It just feels kind of sketch.
Yeah, it's just, it doesn't feel true. Mm-hmm. But the reprieve apparently didn't last long. Joseph said that when he returned to the camper, he claimed that the argument just picked up right back up where it left off. And he testified that Emily then elbowed him in the groin and continued yelling at him. And at some point, according to Joseph, she said, "That's it, you're dead." And this was the moment that Joseph said he feared for his life. He told the court that Emily reached under her pillow and pulled out a Taurus pistol.
Jeez.
Joseph testified that he was horrified and that he immediately reached for his own gun, a Glock 19 equipped with a silencer. And why are we just whipping out guns in a camper like it's a fucking saloon? Like, this does not make any sense. We're fighting with candles. We're wrestling. We're pulling out guns now all of a sudden.
We're making shit up is what we're doing.
Exactly. According to him, as Emily began to raise the pistol, he fired 2 shots in quick succession. Both bullets struck Emily in the head, and she collapsed onto the bed. Joseph described feeling a wave of horror and disbelief wash over him as he processed what had just happened. He told the court, "I yelled at her. I said, 'Are you kidding? Why would you do that?' I'm sorry, who shot who? Why would who do what? You shot her. That makes no sense."
He shot her and then said, "Why do you do that?"
Yes. Yes.
I don't understand.
But instead of calling for help or trying to save Emily, Joseph simply shut down. He would later admit to police that he stayed in the camper that night, sitting beside Emily's body as though nothing had happened. And then the next morning after the shooting, Joseph woke up in the camper, brewed himself a cup of coffee, and sent his sister a text. In the message, he claimed that he and Emily were simply taking it easy and resting from the long drive.
What?
When his sister asked where Emily was, Joseph told her that Emily had gone out to meet some friends. Joseph also kept himself busy with little mundane tasks. He walked the dog, made himself drinks, and even ran errands around town. Meanwhile, Emily is still in the camper. To the outside world, he was just a husband enjoying a weekend getaway with his wife and dog. But inside the camper, though, Emily's body remained exactly where it had fallen. As the hours passed, Emily's family began to grow worried. They hadn't heard from her since her Facebook message the night before, and she wasn't responding to their calls or their text messages. Emily was typically very close with her family, especially her mom, so the silence was unusual and deeply unsettling. Joseph knew Emily's family would eventually start asking questions, and when they did, he was ready with more lies. He told them that Emily had decided to go out alone. He claimed that she had called for an Uber and left the camper in the early afternoon wearing a black long-sleeve top, blue jeans, and white sneakers. He even described watching her walk off, saying that she had her phone and wallet with her. But Joseph's story did not add up. Uber records showed that no driver had picked up Emily that day, and her phone, which Joseph claimed she had taken, had been turned off shortly after the time of her death.
The guy has no credibility with anything. Nothing adds up in anything he says.
Nothing. 4 days after Emily's family reported her missing, the Vermont State Police contacted Joseph. Trooper Cody of the Vermont State Police called Joseph to ask about Emily's whereabouts, and Joseph repeated his lie about the Uber. He even added extra details, claiming that he had driven up and down the road looking for her after she left, but hadn't been able to find her. Joseph claimed he had no idea where Emily had gone or why she hadn't returned. He even tried to portray himself as concerned, saying that he had driven around looking for her and was worried something might have happened. So by this point, Joseph had spent 4 days living with Emily's body. He later testified that he had began to panic, realizing that he needed to do something. So he decided to dismember her remains, claiming he only had vague, fragmented memories of the act.
Can you imagine living in a little camper with somebody that you love, right? And you killed. I mean, aside from the stink and their body decaying and everything, but like, imagine, like, wouldn't you feel eerie? And I mean, yeah, obviously, right? Like it's talking to myself here because I'm just like in circles in my head. It's just bonkers to think about living with someone you killed.
Yeah. And they're just laying there and like...
It's like the story that you covered a long time ago. I don't remember which it was, but it was like the lady had died years ago and they kept her in the bedroom when collecting Social Security. Do you remember that?
Which that's actually happened like more often than we realize, more often than I've covered.
But I remember on that episode, the police came in and went upstairs and she had been dead for like years and she was in the bed upstairs.
Yes. Or the Tote family, the guy that killed his whole family and then just lived with their bodies all in bed together. I mean, people are sick.
The people who, the husband and wife who killed or who kept that one chick living under their bed in a box and would let her go out and roam and stuff and come back. That was so creepy.
And she survived, thankfully. Okay.
Bless me. I'm so sorry.
Sorry about that, guys. So Joseph told the court that he remembered cutting into Emily's leg with a knife, but stopped because the act made him physically ill. And he described vomiting multiple times and drinking heavily to cope. But the evidence painted a much darker picture. Investigators found that Emily's torso had been riddled with stab wounds, many inflicted after her death. Her body had been carefully dismembered with at least 3 different knives, and her remains were placed in garbage bags. So I don't buy this whole, I tried to cut her and it just made me so sick because I'm internally such a good guy. At the core, I'm a good guy who cares.
Right.
No, the evidence says otherwise. The lie detector test determined that was a lie. This was no impulsive act of panic. It was methodical and calculated, made by a cold and callous individual. And despite the police inquiry, Joseph continued living as if nothing had happened. He met up with his sister, spent time in downtown Burlington, and even went out for meals. How are you eating? How are you eating? I don't know about you all, but I'm the type of person where if I am severely stressed or like if I have just seen something devastating, like a dog getting hit by a car, or like if I've just come home from a visitation or a funeral, I know those are like really morbid things, but it's the only thing I can equate to something like this, given that I've never actually seen a dismembered body in front of me like that. But I can't eat. So the thought that he killed someone, has actively dismembered their body, and the body is in the camper. He spent a lot of time with it. And he's like, gosh, I really worked myself up an appetite. You're sick. Mm-hmm. That's sick. At no point did he give any indication that his wife was ever dead or that her now dismembered remains were hidden in the camper. So Joseph later admitted to buying cleaning supplies during this time, including bleach. He told investigators that he had been sick over what happened, but didn't elaborate on why he was actively trying to cover his tracks if the shooting had been in self-defense. The turning point came when Joseph confided in his friend Spencer Lemons. Now, this confession marked a pivotal moment in the investigation. By this point, Joseph had been lying to everyone, Emily's family, the police, and his own sister. But for reasons that we may never fully understand, he chose to open up to Spencer, and the details he revealed were chilling. On the day of the confession, Joseph asked Spencer for a favor. He needed a ride to go pick up his van, which was parked in St. Albans, Vermont. Spencer, unaware of what had transpired over the previous days, agreed. As they drove, Spencer noticed that Joseph seemed unusually quiet and tense. It wasn't the behavior that he'd come to expect from his friend, and it raised immediate red flags. Spencer later testified that he asked Joseph directly if something was wrong. At first, Joseph brushed off the questions, but Spencer did not let up. The conversation quickly took a dark turn. After Spencer repeatedly pressed him, Joseph confessed. He told Spencer that Emily was in the van and that she wasn't alive. Stunned, Spencer asked for clarification. He said, "Is Emily alive?" Joseph said no. And Spencer said, "Did you hurt her?" And he said, "Yes." The weight of the words hung in the air. Spencer knew something was deeply wrong, but he still didn't have the full picture. And trying to stay calm, he continued the conversation, asking Joseph why he hadn't gone to the police. Joseph's response was baffling. He claimed he didn't want to get arrested because he needed to help his grandmother move to a safer home.
What?
Spencer testified that...
Talk about things that are irrelevant.
Yeah. He's like, well, I couldn't because I still needed to help my grandma move. And I totally planned...
I'm going to let him know right after that.
letting him know what I did after that. Like, you just have to believe me.
Right.
Yeah, because your credibility is just sky high right now. Spencer testified that Joseph repeated this reasoning several times as if it were the only thing keeping him from turning himself in. And he also mentioned wanting to avoid prison, saying he couldn't deal with that.
What an asshole.
When they arrived in St. Albans, Spencer noticed several police vehicles parked near the location where Joseph's van was. And this sight immediately set off alarm bells for Spencer, who realized that this situation is way more serious than he'd ever imagined. Like, what did he get himself into? So he turned to Joseph and demanded more answers, saying, "What is going on, man? If I'm going to be driving past cops, I need to know what's going on." And Joseph responded cryptically, saying, "There's a lot going on. I wish I could see my grandmother." So as they approached the police vehicles, Spencer made a decision. He turned the car around, refusing to drive closer. He later testified that Joseph didn't resist, but his fidgety and anxious behavior was unsettling. Once they were safely away from the scene, Spencer pulled over and made a decision that would ultimately lead to Joseph's arrest. He told Joseph to get out of his car, saying, "I don't want to go to prison with you. Get out of my car right now." Go, Spencer.
Good decision.
Yes. Joseph complied, and as soon as he was out of the vehicle, Spencer called 911. In the recorded call, Spencer's voice was shaky but firm as he relayed what Joseph had told him. He said he heard his wife. He said she's in the van and that she's not alive. "I don't know what to do. I just need someone to come here now." The operator assured Spencer that help was on the way and advised him to stay clear of Joseph. Police responded swiftly, tracking Joseph down shortly after Spencer's call. He was arrested without incident and taken into custody. And during questioning, Joseph stuck to the story that he'd been telling all along. He claimed the shooting was an act of self-defense, but as investigators dug deeper, his version of events began to unravel. Inside the camper, police made the gruesome discovery. Emily's dismembered remains were found in multiple garbage bags, along with blood-stained tools that Joseph had used to cut her body apart. Her torso showed signs of post-mortem stab wounds, and investigators found evidence that Joseph had attempted to clean up the crime scene with bleach. Emily's phone, which Joseph claimed she had taken with her, was also found in the camper. It had been turned off shortly after her death, a fact that contradicted his earlier claims. And after Joseph's arrest, investigators began piecing together the events leading up to Emily Schwartz's death. What they uncovered painted a starkly different picture from the one that Joseph had presented. Joseph insisted from the beginning that he had shot Emily in self-defense. He described her as physically abusive and claimed that she had threatened him with a gun. However, forensic evidence and witness testimony raised serious doubts about his story. Inside the camper, they found her body in the garbage bags, her torso with all the stab wounds, and 3 different knives with her DNA were recovered from the camper, along with a serrated saw that Joseph used to dismember her. The tools and garbage bags suggested premeditation rather than this moment of panic. The Glock 19 that Joseph used to shoot Emily was equipped with a silencer, and prosecutors argued that this demonstrated forethought. If Joseph had been acting in self-defense, why would he take the time to attach a silencer? Emily had been lying on the bed when she was shot. Forensic analysis revealed that the 2 gunshots had entered the left side of her head at close range. And this contradicted Joseph's claim that Emily had been attacking him. If she was lunging at him, then this wouldn't... I mean, she was laying down when she was shot.
Mm-hmm. There wasn't self-defense.
She wasn't lunging at him.
Yeah.
Investigators also focused on Joseph's actions in the days following the murder. His decision to stay with Emily's body, his lies to her family and the police, and his eventual dismemberment of all her remains all pointed to a calculated effort to cover up the crime, something that you would not do if it was truly self-defense. And Joseph's claim that Emily had taken an Uber was easily disproven. Surveillance footage showed Joseph purchasing bleach and other cleaning supplies from a local store. Investigators believed that he had planned to clean up the crime scene before disposing of Emily's body. Prosecutors believed that the motive was rooted in control and anger. Emily had reportedly told Joseph that she wanted to leave him, and the couple had argued about his infidelity. Witnesses testified that Emily had discovered Joseph had brought her to the same condo complex where his ex-wife lived, a move that she found to be disrespectful and hurtful. So feeling disrespected and losing control, prosecutors argued that Joseph killed Emily in a fit of rage, which I believe to be the most likely scenario.
100%. But also with some premeditation. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a fit of rage. Like a fit of rage just to me implies that it was impulsive, but I think it was something he was planning to do, don't you?
Yeah, I think even if he wasn't planning to do this on this trip, he planned to do it at some point and knew that the opportunity was there and that he had a gun. And that makes me think he had thought about it before.
Same.
And then finally just came to the decision to do it.
Same. I just don't think it was just like a random thing that he had no clue was going to happen.
Right. Yeah. I don't either. So Joseph's trial began in late 2023, and it was as gripping as it was disturbing. The case revolved around two competing narratives, Joseph's claim of self-defense versus the prosecution's assertion of premeditated murder. So Joseph's defense rested on his claim that Emily had been physically abusive throughout their relationship, and he described a history of violent outbursts and said that he had endured them without ever fighting back, which I don't believe. And in fact, if you watch any of his testimony online, you can find it on YouTube. There's even parts where he's giving his testimony and then he starts to say something that he's alleging Emily said, and the prosecution interjects and objects, saying it's hearsay. You can't say what someone else has said or someone else has said unless they're there to prove that they did say that, right? You can't just say, you can't quote for someone.
Yeah.
And so when his defense attorney asks him to continue, he kind of has this temper tantrum and he's like, well, I was trying to say what happened and then I guess that was a problem. So I don't know what to do now. Like he's saying this on the stand and he has this attitude about him that's like, dude, this is not a good look for you. Like if you're supposed to be on the stand, giving your best version of yourself, your most convincing good guy approach, this is not it.
Yeah,
right?
Not a good strategy.
After weeks of testimony and evidence, the jury deliberated for just a few hours before reaching a verdict. Joseph was found guilty of first-degree murder. The jury rejected his claim of self-defense, agreeing with prosecutors that the murder had been premeditated. Joseph's sentencing hearing was held in early 2024, and Emily's family, who had been a constant presence throughout the trial, gave emotional victim impact statements. Emily's mother described the pain of losing her daughter in such a violent and senseless way, saying, quote, she was supposed to have her whole life ahead of her. Instead, she was taken from us in the most horrific way imaginable. The judge sentenced Joseph to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Good.
The maximum sentence for first-degree murder. The courtroom was silent as the sentence was read, except for Emily's family, who wept quietly. As we wrap up today's episode, it's important to step back and remember who Emily Schwartz was beyond the horrific details of her death, because while the headlines focused on her tragic end, her life was so much more than that. Emily was just 22 years old with her whole life ahead of her. Her family described her as vibrant, full of life, and the kind of person who could light up a room with her laughter. She loved animals, and her dog Remington was like her shadow, always by her side. She was fiercely independent, the type of woman who wasn't afraid to take bold steps, like proposing to the man that she loved with a playful card and a checkbox. Her mother recalls Emily's love for adventure and her ability to see the good in people even when it wasn't always deserved. She was kind, empathetic, and unafraid to express herself. Her family remembers her as someone who cherished the little things in life, like spending time with her loved ones, making memories that they now hold on to so tightly. In the years since her death, Emily's family has worked tirelessly to honor her memory. They've spoken openly about the dangers of domestic violence, hoping to raise awareness and help others recognize the warning signs before it's too late. They've created a scholarship in Emily's name, supporting young women pursuing careers in fields that she was passionate about. But most importantly, they keep her spirit alive by remembering the joy that she brought to their lives. Emily's family says that while her life was cut short, her impact will never be forgotten. They choose to focus not on the way she died, but on the way she lived, with courage, love, and a heart that always sought to uplift those around her. Now, if you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please know help is available. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is open 24/7 at 1-800-799-7233. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode. We will be back next Tuesday with a brand new one.
That was a heartbreaker.
They always are.
Mama, mystery, out.